Hey, new picklers, there are 3 rules that really define pickleball. The most important one is the non-volley zone rule, where I'm standing now, so the kitchen rule, the non-volley zone rule. We've invited CJ Johnson onto this video to help us explain this rule, and just hopefully once and for all, get over the misunderstanding of the non-volley zone rule and how it impacts your play. Let's get into it.
Hi CJ, thanks for being on with us in this video to help us explain this non-volley zone rule. If I get another misexplanation of it about on the court, I'm going to lose my mind. So I appreciate you being on here and helping me explain this to everybody. Hopefully we get this done. This will be the definitive video on non-volley zone, CJ.
Hey, Tony, thank you so much for having me. When you called to ask about this, I was like, oh yes, let's talk about it. Because really, is there any place that people make more confusing than the non-volley zone?
It's the number one misunderstood rule. And, you know, to me, there's like 3 rules that kind of define our game, the non-volley zone rule being the most important one. And I can't believe how it's misunderstood.
Absolutely. There's just the strange things that you hear. And I know we're going to talk about some of those in the videos, but as time goes on, I hear more and more and more. So let's get into it and figure out how to help people to better understand this.
CJ, we're going to turn to you now on the court. Explain the rule.
Let's start this by defining the kitchen as well as the volley. Non-volley zone is the area of the court bounded by 3 lines and the net. The parallel line 7 feet from the net and the 2 sidelines, which are perpendicular to the net. All non-volley zone lines are inside the non-volley zone. That means if you're touching any of those lines, you're considered to be inside the non-volley zone. Now that we know the boundaries of the non-volley zone, let's define the word volley. Rule 3.A.37 defines volley as during a rally, hitting the ball in the air before the ball bounces. Here's what Rule 9E says. A player may enter the non-volley zone at any time except when the player is volleying the ball.
Thanks, CJ. That's a really good explanation of the non-volley zone rule. Now that we have that, let's break it down into the 3 different kind of subcomponents of the non-volley zone rule. Let's talk about the basic rule real quick again, and then we're going to talk about the momentum rule and then the reestablishment rule. The basic non-volley zone rule is that I can't volley in the non-volley zone or in the kitchen, right? So that basically means I can't have a foot inside the non-volley zone and hit a volley. If I hit a volley while I'm inside the non-volley zone, that's a violation or a fault. Same thing applies with a line. The line is part of the non-volley zone area, so if I'm stepping on the line and I hit a volley, that's a violation of the non-volley zone rule. A corollary of the non-volley zone rule is the momentum rule. It's known as the momentum rule. It basically means if I'm standing on the side of the non-volley zone or the kitchen and I hit a volley, and as part of my momentum I step into the non-volley zone, that's a fault. It's basically considered that my momentum carrying me into the non-volley zone is the same as if I had been standing in the non-volley zone to begin with. So the momentum is basically if I hit the volley and then the momentum from the shot brings me into the non-volley zone, that's a fault. One common misunderstanding of the momentum rule is that players think that when the ball is dead that you can then step into the non-volley zone. That's not accurate. The ball can bounce 20 times, hit the fence, it doesn't matter. If I hit the volley and I stand here like this, kind of like Keystone Cops and going like this and going like this and going like this, doesn't matter how long I'm going like this for, if I step into the non-volley zone as a result of my momentum from the shot, that's considered a fault. Quick tip that might help you sometimes is if you hit the ball and you look like you're falling in the non-volley zone, your partner, assuming your partner is outside of the non-volley zone at the time, can hold you back and avoid you from going into the non-volley zone. The last corollary of the non-volley zone rule, it's very rare, but it's a reestablishment rule. What that means is if I'm over here and I step into the non-volley zone and then I come out of it and hit the ball without reestablishing my foot outside of the non-volley zone, that's a violation. Where you generally see that is 2 places. One, you see it on overheads. What will happen is a player will basically step in like this and then jump and hit an overhead. Riley Newman does that sometimes because he's an athletic player, but he'll come in like this. That's a non-volley zone. He's in the non-volley zone. He hasn't broken any rules yet. But what happens is when he jumps up, keeps his foot in the air and hits the overhead, that's a violation. The other area you see it is on Ernie. People will step through the non-volley zone or step on the line as they go across. That's also a violation of the non-volley zone rule. Another area that's commonly misunderstood about the non-volley zone rule is players think that they have to wait till the ball bounces until they step into the non-volley zone, and that's not correct. And that's why I don't like explaining it to say wait until the ball bounces before you can step in the non-volley zone, because that's not the rule. The rule is just I can't volley it inside the non-volley zone. CJ is going to walk us through a quick explanation of the rule on bouncing or waiting for it to bounce before you step into the non-volley zone.
Rule 9E covers one of the most common misconceptions out there. Many people think they can't enter the non-volley zone until the ball is bounced. Rule 9.f further clarifies it by saying a player may enter the non-volley zone before or after returning any ball that bounces.
Now that we talked about the rule, let's talk a little bit about it strategically, or the strategy of how you play at the NVZ. First thing you want to do is you want to play uncomfortably close to the non-volley zone line. The way I tell my students is I tell them to get up as close to that non-volley zone line as they can. Even if you're a little bit uncomfortable, that's perfectly fine. Don't worry about, the occasional shift in. If you shift in, call it on yourself, that's fine. You're not going to lose games normally because of a shift in. Where you will lose games is by standing off the non-volley zone line and opening up angles and some other things that we're going to talk about in a second. When you stand right up next to the non-volley zone, uncomfortably close to the non-volley zone, what happens is you make it harder on your opponents to basically get it to drop it into the non-volley zone. If I take just one step back like this, I'm opening up a lot more space to my opponents to drop it in front of me. If I stand here and I stretch my paddle out, right, it's going to be harder for my opponents to get it into the non-volley zone without me being able to attack it. So being here does a couple of things. One, it puts pressure on my opponents. Two, it allows me to attack balls that I may not be able to attack if I'm standing off the line like this. Another two aspects of standing up the non-volley zone line is that you reduce angles. So if I'm standing here, the angles of attack against me are smaller. As I pull back, more court's exposed, opening up more angles to attack. The other thing that gets exposed when I pull off the line are my feet. The hardest shot in pickleball is when someone gets it at your feet. So if I'm standing here and a player standing there, they're not going to really be able to get to my feet with a shot. It's going to be difficult for them to. If I stand back, now my feet are more exposed, subject to attack. Next time you go out and play, test it out. Go out with a friend of yours, have them stand opposite from you in the non-volley zone, and then kind of have them step far, a little bit back, a little bit in. Look at their feet, look at the angles that open up. What you'll see is the farther back they are from the line, the more able you are to attack their feet, the more open angles are available to you, the more open angles you can hit, and it's just an easier way to play if your opponent is off the line. Don't be the opponent that plays off the line and makes it easy on the other player. Make it difficult by being up to the line.
CJ, those are some really good points. Thanks for sharing them with everybody. I'm hoping that this video helps players out there understand this rule finally, avoid some of the mistakes or disadvantageous or less optimal play that happens from not having a clear understanding of the rule, and hopefully that improves their play. So, what do you think, CJ?
I think that it's important everyone remembers that if you know the rules, you can make the rules work for you while you are out on the court, and it's going to add to better play as well as more enjoyment.
Next time you're playing, if you hear the non-volley zone being referred to incorrectly, please try and help the opponent, your partners or the other players in your group understand the non-volley zone rule. It's a really important rule, obviously, to understand. So it's just something to help out with. Make sure when you're playing that you're up at the non-volley zone line, that you're uncomfortably close, closing those angles and things like that. And if you want to learn more about the non-volley zone rule, I'm going to link over here to a video by our friend CJ Johnson at Better Pickleball with some more advanced concepts on the non-volley zone line rule. Good luck out there.